You are falling. There is no ground beneath you, no sound, just the rush of air and the certainty that this is it. And then, a fraction of a second before you hit, you are awake. Heart slamming, lungs gasping, staring at a ceiling that has no idea what just almost happened to you. You have felt this. Almost everyone has. It feels like a glitch, like your mind hit pause one frame too early to save you the trauma of the impact. But it is not a glitch. It is the oldest alarm system your body owns, and it has been quietly rehearsing your death on schedule for your entire life. By the end of this, you will understand exactly what flips that switch, why it always seems to happen right before the worst part, and why your body considers a fake death dangerous enough to require a real, physical alarm. Start with the obvious question. Why do dreams of dying almost never finish? You do not see yourself dead. You do not feel the impact. You wake up exactly at the threshold every single time. That timing is not a coincidence, and it is not your imagination protecting you from something too disturbing to witness. It is a measurable physiological event, and it has a name in sleep science: the arousal response. Here is what is actually happening underneath that falling dream. Your brain, during REM sleep, is running a kind of nightly simulation. Sleep researcher Allan Hobson, who spent decades mapping the neuroscience of dreaming, described REM sleep as a state where the brainstem fires essentially at random, and the cortex scrambles to make a story out of the noise. That theory is called activation synthesis. Your brain is not narrating a script. It is improvising one, in real time, from chaotic electrical static. But here is where it gets stranger. Some of that static is not random at all. Finnish researcher Antti Revonsuo studied thousands of dream reports and found something the dreams had in common across cultures, ages, and backgrounds. Threats: falling, being chased, drowning, being attacked. Revonsuo proposed that dreaming exists evolutionarily to rehearse danger. He called it the threat simulation theory. Your brain is not malfunctioning when it drops you off a cliff at 3 a.m. It is training you. The same way a fire drill trains a building full of people who have never seen a real fire. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. If your brain is rehearsing your death on purpose, why does it always stop you right before you die? The answer is that your brain cannot fully tell the difference between a simulated threat and a real one. Not completely, not at the level that matters for survival. During REM sleep, your body is in a state called REM atonia. Your muscles are essentially switched off, paralyzed, so you do not act out your dreams and injure yourself or whoever is sleeping next to you. But your nervous system is still very much online. Your heart rate, your breathing, your blood pressure, all of it is still being managed by ancient brain structures that do not read dream content. They just read intensity. So when the dream content escalates, when you are falling, when something is about to kill you, your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, lights up exactly as if the danger were real. It does not have a separate setting for this is fiction. It has one setting: threat detected, prepare the body. Cortisol releases. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream. Your heart rate begins to climb toward a level your body associates with mortal danger, not light exercise. Some recorded cases during nightmare-induced arousals show heart rates spiking into ranges normally seen during a sprint or a genuine fight. And that is the exact moment your survival system steps in and overrides the dream. Picture two control rooms in your brain, both monitoring you simultaneously, and only one of them caring what story is being told. The first room is your dreaming cortex, narrating the fall, the chase, the final blow. The second room is older, lower, more primitive, and it does not care about narrative at all. It only tracks raw physiological data: heart rate, oxygen levels, blood pressure. When that second room sees numbers climbing into a zone associated with cardiac danger, while your body is simultaneously paralyzed in REM atonia, it treats that combination as an emergency that overrides everything else. Dream content becomes irrelevant. The priority becomes binary. Wake this body up, right now, before the cardiovascular system commits to something it cannot easily undo. This is why people often gasp, jolt upright, or feel their heart pounding the instant they wake from a death dream. That is not leftover fear from the dream. That is your brainstem manually overriding your respiratory and motor systems, forcing a hard reboot, because the body's stress signature crossed a threshold it is not willing to gamble on while you are paralyzed and unconscious. There is a specific danger your body seems to be guarding against here, and it has a clinical name: a vasovagal response. This is the same mechanism behind fainting from extreme fear, pain, or shock while awake. It is your vagus nerve overcorrecting in response to a sudden physiological spike, sometimes dropping heart rate and blood pressure so fast that consciousness is lost. Combine an overcorrection like that with the muscular paralysis of REM atonia, and you have the ingredients for something far more dangerous than a bad dream. Researchers studying nightmare-related arousals, including work building on Calvin Kai Ching's sleep studies on falling dreams, have pointed to this same pattern. The dream does not need to finish. The body has already gathered enough data to know that finishing it is not worth the risk. So here is the rehook, because this gets even stranger. Why falling specifically? Why is it one of the most universal death dreams on Earth, reported across wildly different cultures with no shared mythology? Researcher Tore Nielsen and others studying hypnic jerks, that sudden full-body twitch you feel right as you are drifting off to sleep, found a compelling clue. As your body transitions into sleep, your brainstem briefly misreads the muscular relaxation of falling asleep as the sensation of actually falling. Your inner ear's vestibular system, the part of you that tracks balance and gravity, sends a burst of "we are falling" signal at the exact moment your muscles go limp. Your brain, half formed into a dream state, takes that raw sensory data and builds an entire narrative around it. A real physical signal gets wrapped in a fictional story. That is why falling dreams so often end in a violent jolt awake. The ending is not narrative. It is your vestibular system reporting, in real time, a destabilization your motor cortex has no way to correct because your muscles are offline. This is the same reason falling dreams almost never let you land. Landing would mean your simulated body absorbed a fatal impact while your real heart rate is already elevated and your real muscles are already paralyzed. Your alarm system is not interested in finding out what happens next. It pulls the plug before the simulation can finish its sentence. Think about how precisely timed that has to be. Too late, and a real cardiac event becomes more likely during sleep paralysis. Too early, and you wake up constantly from totally harmless dreams, destroying your sleep architecture and leaving you exhausted every day of your life. Evolution did not design a system that is cautious. It designed a system that is exact. Millions of years of nights spent vulnerable, unconscious, paralyzed, and exposed to real predators shaped a threshold so precise that most people only consciously notice it the handful of times a year their dream content happens to escalate enough to trip it. That is also why this experience feels universal instead of rare. It is not that everyone dreams about dying constantly. It is that this exact override only fires when a dream's emotional and physiological intensity crosses a specific line, which is precisely the kind of dream most likely to be remembered the next morning. You are not noticing every time your brain runs a threat simulation. You are only remembering the nights the simulation got real enough to require a forced shutdown. Now we can close the loop we opened at the very beginning. Why do you always wake up right before you die in a dream, never after? Because there is no after your body is willing to simulate. The instant your stress hormones, heart rate, and respiratory signature mimic a genuine survival emergency, your evolutionary alarm system stops asking what the dream is about and starts asking only one question: is this body's heart still beating in a way I recognize as safe? The moment the answer becomes uncertain, REM atonia gets forcibly broken, oxygen intake gets manually restored through that gasp, and you are yanked into consciousness specifically so your nervous system can confirm in real time that you are not actually dying. The ending you never see is not censorship. It is rescue. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little. This same circuitry is still active right now, while you are awake, reading this. The amygdala that cannot distinguish a dream threat from a real one is the exact same amygdala that fires during a panic attack triggered by nothing more than a racing thought. Researchers studying panic disorder have repeatedly found that the body's physiological signature during a waking panic attack, the heart rate spike, the air hunger, the overwhelming sense of dying, is almost identical to what gets recorded during a nightmare-induced arousal. Your nervous system did not build a separate alarm for asleep and awake danger. It built one alarm, calibrated over millions of years of nights spent vulnerable in the dark, and that alarm does not actually know the difference between a dream collapsing and a thought spiraling. It only knows that the numbers it is tracking, heart rate, breath, blood oxygen, have crossed into territory it associates with not surviving. So the next time you wake up gasping, heart pounding, certain for one disoriented second that you almost died, you are not broken, and you did not imagine the intensity of it. You experienced one of the most precisely tuned safety mechanisms your body owns, doing exactly what it has done for every human who has ever closed their eyes vulnerable in the dark. It let the story play almost all the way to the end, gathered everything it needed to know about your real physical safety, and then, in the final fraction of a second before the part that would have actually mattered, it chose you. You are falling. There is no ground beneath you, no sound, just the rush of air. But now you know what happens a fraction of a second before you hit. Your oldest alarm system looks at your racing heart, decides the story has gone on long enough, and wakes you up on purpose, because it has been keeping you alive this exact way since long before you ever learned to call it a dream.